This is the Keychron K3 Ultra, the latest in what has become a pretty long line of popular, low-profile 75% mechanical keyboards. An earlier version of this exact keyboard, the K3 V2, was actually one of my very first mechanical keyboards, and since then, each iteration that they've released has stacked small improvements upon small improvements. Now, this new Ultra model looks to continue that legacy of being a solid, reasonably priced option for keyboard lovers out there, or an excellent entry point into the mechanical keyboard space for the first time, like it was for me years ago. But there's one big question that I had in my mind coming into this review, which is, does this new model keep up with the recent competition from brands like Newfie and others? As a disclaimer, this keyboard was sent over to me by Keychron, but they had no say in whether or how I chose to cover it. You can find affiliate links in the video description if you'd like to pick one up for yourself. And with that, let's jump into the details. Starting with build and design, this case structure is a bit unique. At its core, this is a full ABS plastic keyboard. It's quite lightweight with almost no bezels around the keys. Then, slid onto these tracks at the top and bottom are some thin aluminum accent pieces, and finally screwed onto the sides are some accent pieces made of wood. The end result is a light board, just 572 grams or 1.26 pounds, with nice visual interest from those wood pieces and a nice feel from the aluminum accents. This isn't the first time that Keychron has created keyboards in this wood-accented style, but it does represent a departure from the previous K-series models, like this K3 Max, which featured a full aluminum top case paired with a plastic bottom case. Unfortunately, for some, adding those accent pieces around the edges also makes the new Ultra model larger than the previous generations. It's subtle, but it adds about 5% more to the side-to-side width and about 9% more to the top-to-bottom length. Overall, this isn't a huge difference, but it is a shame that the K Max series was about as small and thin as you could find in the mechanical keyboard space, and now the K Ultra is a little bit more like everyone else. From a height and typing angle perspective, you'll also notice a slight difference. Visually, the Ultra looks significantly taller, but a lot of that is deceiving because the case comes up a lot higher. It covers the base of the switches, which were more exposed on the previous generations. Functionally though, it's not quite as extreme, but it is noticeable. It's about 2 millimeters higher at the front and around 1.3 millimeters higher at the back. Once again, this new version takes away some of what made this the ultimate thin and light keyboard. For controlling typing angle, there are still dual stage feet on the bottom. The Ultra offers a 1.9 degree typing angle by default. When you combine that with the standard keycaps, which feel a little bit like they're falling away from you, this feels quite flat to type on. The feet then give you the option of going to 3.3 degrees or 6 degrees. You'll note that these numbers are a little bit lower than those presented in the original K3 Ultra Kickstarter, which is all I had to go from at the time of scripting, but my numbers are based on my own personal measurements using a digital angle gauge on the edge of the case. For comparison again, at every level, this feels just slightly lower than the equivalent on the Max model. For colors, there's two available. This is the white model, and there's a black version available as well. This particular black board is technically the HE version, which I'm going to review separately, but physically and color-wise, they're the same. So you can use these images as an idea of what you'd get with the white versus the black. In addition to the case and the keycaps changing, note that the wood accents are a bit darker on the black model as well. For key layout, this is the 75% version, and it's the same design they've been using for years. Full function row across the top, a screenshot key, delete, and a backlight button at the top right, and finally navigation buttons down the side. For many people, this 75% size is perfect, offering everything you need while being compact on your desk. For those who need more keys, or fewer keys for that matter, Keychron has historically released all of their K-series models in a number of different layouts. They began with this 75% version since that tends to be one of the most popular, but I am almost certain that they will release a full-size version, a TKL model, and probably some smaller 60 or 65% designs as well. Depending on when you're watching this, they might already be out. You can use the affiliate links in the description to go check if you're curious. Finally, for my international viewers, there are 3 different ISO versions available on this board as well, which is always nice to see. For typing experience, Keychron has continued to make small incremental improvements generation over generation. The result is a solid typing experience with some specific improvements to the spacebar that I'll talk about soon. For components, this board uses hot swappable Keychron Milk Palm switches, which are available in linear red, which is what I have and will be testing shortly. There is also a tactile brown and a tactile banana. These are pretty standard offerings for recent Keychron models, but I would really encourage Keychron to begin selling some silent switches with their low-profile boards, since those have been my personal favorites lately, and they seem to be a pretty big differentiator for other brands like Newfie and Lowfree. Just please, if you do, don't make them cost way more. The keycaps are pretty much identical to the prior models. They use double-shot PBT plastic, which means that they should resist shine. And they also continue to be non-shine-through on these higher-end models, though you can get shine-through keycaps if you opt for the cheaper K3 version 3. I'll link to my review video for that board in the video description. Internally, this uses an aluminum top plate, which is a little bit surprising since most competing boards use the softer polycarbonate material. They added in a little bit more sound-absorbing materials this time around, although they still don't have anything like a gasket mount to provide that soft, cushioned feel. Here's a typing test so that you can hear. Overall, the typing here is good, but it's certainly not the best on the market today. It's fairly quiet with these red switches and has a nice sound to it as you type. The feel is also nice, though it is a little bit stiff with the aluminum top plate and no gasket mount, but it's not bad. One thing that surprised me was the switches, which feel quite heavy. Their advertised operating force doesn't indicate that they'd be this heavy, but something about them is requiring more force than I'm used to, which can be a bit fatiguing if you're typing for a long time. Next, there are 2 areas I want to highlight specifically on this board, starting with the spacebar. Now, Keychron often has issues getting their spacebars to sound as good as some of the competition. This one is still not perfect, but it's a big improvement over their previous Max generation. To demonstrate this progress, I'm going to do a side-by-side comparison with the spacebar on the K3 Max to the new model. To limit variability, I'm going to use the exact same red switch in both boards. Additionally, to show you that there's still room to grow, I'm going to also compare the Newfie Node 75 using an equivalent one of their red switches. The exact switch isn't compatible across boards. I think that the Newfie sounds best, but you guys can tell me whether you think differently. For the second item, I want to talk about a specific issue on my board. You might have heard it during my typing test if you listened closely. It concerns the Enter key. Listen for the rattles, specifically when I hit the right side of the key. Now, I'm pretty certain that I know the cause here. It's a lack of lubrication within a specific section of the stabilizer. It's definitely not the switch, because I tried swapping in and out different switches and the same problem persisted. It's not all of the stabilizers because none of the other stabilized keys have this issue. I can see lube at the bottom of the stabilizer down here, but it doesn't seem like any or enough got up here. If you run into this issue and you like to modify keyboards, then it's not a problem. Just throw some extra lube in there and go on your way. However, if you're someone who wants to ensure that you get a perfectly working model out of the box, this could be frustrating. Now, importantly, this is a one-off issue, and it obviously will not be like this on every board, but it's an example of something that could happen to you. Overall, I think that there are better typing experiences available at similar price points from some other brands, which I'll talk about some specifics later. Newfie tends to be my favorite personally. However, in a vacuum, this is a totally acceptable typing experience, and it is a true improvement over the previous generation. Moving over to connectivity, this keyboard offers 3 Bluetooth 5.2 connections, a 2.4 gig USB receiver with an adapter to bring it closer to your board if you wish, plus the ability to use a direct wired connection. This is all controlled via a switch on the side of the board, and the charging cable provided in the box has a 90-degree connection, which works well with the design. It's compatible with Mac, Windows, and Linux. There are Windows keycaps in the box, Mac ones are pre-installed. Finally, there's a physical switch to move between Mac and Windows modes on the side as well, which is always my preference over a key command. The sleep to wake settings on wireless connections are set to 10 minutes for turning off backlights and 2 hours for full sleep, which disconnects Bluetooth. It does take a second to wake back up. However, a 2-hour default means that you won't really encounter this too much throughout your day. Plus, you can easily change it within the web app, which is great. Other than that, I have my obligatory section here where I note Keychron's history of Bluetooth issues. Now, most of my recent boards from them have been getting a lot better, almost to the point where I felt like I could take this section out, but then once again, this board had some problems. Random disconnections, sudden non-responsiveness in the middle of typing that would return to normal just as randomly as it stopped working. Like so many people complaining in forums, these issues don't seem to have a rhyme or reason, they kind of just happen. You can either deal with them as they come, powering the board on and off usually does the trick in most cases, or you can use the USB receiver or the wired connection, which are considerably more stable. It's frustrating and confusing why this continues to be a problem, but here we are. The last connectivity topic is the big advertised new feature, which is the introduction of an 8,000 Hz polling rate on both the wired connection and the 2.4 gig USB receiver. Now, I'm going to be brief in this video, but if you want my full thoughts, go to this review and this timestamp, which I'll also put in the video description. It talks in a bit more detail. For the brief explanation, polling rate is how often your device can send information to your computer. If you want to use this keyboard for office work or other basic computing, honestly, polling rate doesn't really matter. If you use a Bluetooth connection, for example, on literally any keyboard, it's going to be a low 125 Hz, and most people that do that don't really have any issue. If, on the other hand, you want to play fast-paced or competitive games, getting a keyboard with at least 1000 Hz is pretty easily accessible and good to have. It means that you'll have less lag time between your input and when something happens on your screen, and that's a huge competitive advantage in gaming. 8000 Hz is technically faster than 1000 Hz, but you're pretty unlikely to notice any difference. On top of that, 8000 Hz is going to drain your battery more quickly because the keyboard is doing more work. Keychron, I think, clearly knows this because when you first connect these keyboards to your computer, it defaults to 1000 Hz. This feels a little bit like an admission of guilt that 8000 Hz really isn't that necessary. But in reality, it's probably more about giving the best experience to the largest number of people, and knowing that people who really care about polling rate will be more than capable of using the launcher web app to change it. Plus, you can change the wired and USB receiver independently, which I think is a pretty nice touch, allowing you to preserve battery when using the receiver, but still crank it up when plugged in. For battery, this keyboard uses a 2600 mAh battery, which is a little bit undersized compared to competitors, most of which have been using 4000 mAh sizes for years now. In the past, this small size was a serious limiting factor. The K3 Max got less than 100 hours of use when you had backlighting turned off. However, This keyboard, like many of Keychron's newer offerings, switches from QMK firmware to ZMK. This change allows the board to be a lot more efficient, and as a result, this model can get up to 550 hours of use with backlighting turned off, which is truly impressive. Now, according to the Kickstarter page, this 550 hours is specifically in the 8000 Hz wireless mode. If that's true, it would be extremely impressive. As I said, higher polling rates put more strain on your battery. As a result, I kind of have my doubts about this claim. I'm wondering if there was a slight mistake in the marketing. If there's one thing that I've learned from reviewing products, it's that marketers will always choose the ideal light to show their product in. If this keyboard gets 550 hours of use with 8K polling, then the number on Bluetooth would be insane. With brands like Newfie touting over 1,000 hours, I have to imagine that Keychron would want to put that number up there next to it, especially if they could do it with a battery almost half the size. Based on the results of my testing, this does have exceptional battery life, and I have no reason to doubt that it can get over 500 hours in the right circumstances. I just don't know that I believe that those circumstances would include 8,000 Hz polling. Unfortunately, I don't have the time or resources currently to do detailed 500+ hour battery tests, hopefully someday. If you get one of these and you use it maxed out for a very long period of time, please comment down below for all of our sake how long it lasts for you. Finally, one last fun treat related to the battery. You can use function plus B to check your battery life. It will light up the number row with each number corresponding to 10% of the battery. I always love when boards have this as a quick reference of how much charge it's got. For customization, let's jump back to that ZMK firmware change. Many of you will probably have heard of QMK, a common open source firmware type that tons of brands have used for quite a long time now, including Keychron on the previous K Max series. ZMK is a newer, also open source firmware that was designed with wireless use specifically in mind. Now, QMK, being much older, was initially created when the vast majority of mechanical boards were primarily or exclusively wired. From my understanding, the more efficient nature of ZMK requires less power, plus the hardware required to run it requires less power as well, thus you can make a pretty significant stride in battery life as a result. But what does that mean for customization? Well, if you use Keychron's Launcher web app, nothing. It still works great. It's one of the best proprietary systems I've used for customizing a keyboard. You can remap keys, add macros, change backlighting, adjust settings, update firmware, basically anything you could want. The only real impact is if you prefer to use VIA for customization, as this is no longer compatible. The equivalent in the ZMK ecosystem is called ZMK Studio, but this is much less mature. Plus, keyboards aren't going to be compatible unless the manufacturers specifically choose to support it. And based on my testing, this doesn't seem to be the case with this particular model. Disclaimer though, I have not tested a device that is compatible with it before, so there's a chance that I'm just doing something wrong. ZMK is still pretty new in the mainstream. Overall, Launcher is a great application and it doesn't require you to download anything onto your computer, which is awesome. It is proprietary though, which means that Keychron could change it in the future or stop supporting it fully in the future as well. However, with the scale that Keychron has reached, I doubt that it's going to go away anytime soon, but I definitely want to call that out as the other side of the coin when we move away from open source projects and support for third-party platforms like VIA. For backlighting, there are north-facing RGB backlights and non-shine-through keycaps. It looks fine, but there's nothing particularly remarkable about this compared to every other RGB backlit keyboard these days. The fact that it's north-facing at least means that you could add on some low-profile shine-through keycaps if that's important to you, but otherwise, I feel like my RGB sections keep getting shorter and shorter. Is there more that you want to know? Like, there's 24 different backlight patterns. That's kind of a lot. You can also do per key light assignments in the Launcher web app, which is also cool. But ever since I got a monitor light, I typically just prefer backlighting off in my daily use. Maybe I'm just getting old. I don't know. You tell me what you want from these sections. For now, let's move on to pricing. The Keychron K3 Ultra retails for $110, which is the same price that the K3 Max sold for, though gone is the ability to purchase the board without hot swappable switches or without RGB to save some money. The ISO models also retail for the same price, which keeps everything nice and simple. This pricing is fair for what you're getting here, but over time, the competitive landscape has really intensified in the low-profile mechanical space in general, and in particular at the $100 to $150 price point. Just to name a few of the alternative options, the Newfie Node 75 is $100 and is probably my top recommendation if Keychron doesn't meet your needs. Newfie's Kick 75 is super unique and is $110. Low Freeze Flow Light 84 is now down to $90, though you do have to spend a lot more to get their best switch option in my opinion. EpoMaker's Luma 84 is $110 and is probably the cheapest full aluminum low profile board. On the slightly more expensive side, the Melgeek O2 is $130. Just make sure you watch my video explaining the problems that I had before you pull the trigger on that one. Newfie's Air 75 V3 is $140 and is excellent if you have the extra money. The iQnix Magi 75 is also $140 but is fully aluminum. Now finally, we might be getting a little bit out of people's price range here, but the iQnix MQ80 is another cool option, though it's $160 and slightly less low profile. And finally, the Low Free Flow 284 is also $160, but it's got a weird bump out on the side, and ultimately that's another one where you should watch my video first. As you can see, there's a ton of options these days. Keychron is at the lower end of that price range, but it does have excellent features and only really lacks a little bit in the typing experience. For the full details though, let's recap the differentiators and deal breakers. For the positives, the design is unique with the wood accents on the side. This is not just a simple copy and paste of a design used by many different manufacturers. The typing is improved over the previous generation. In particular, we looked at the spacebar improvements. The battery life is very good, thanks mostly to the firmware switch. The customization is super easy with that launcher web app. Connectivity is good, and 8,000 Hertz polling is available, though maybe not completely necessary. Finally, the pricing is on the lower end of the competition, with very few low-profile mechanical keyboards that I would recommend beating it. For potential deal breakers, there is very stiff competition these days, especially if you're willing to spend just a little bit more, and many of those will offer a better typing experience, including things like silent switches, gasket mounts, or just more consistent stabilizers. The Bluetooth connectivity had some hiccups for me, which is in line with prior Keychron devices that I've tested, unfortunately. The size is no longer as small and thin as the predecessor devices, which is a bit of a bummer, in particular for people who want to take this keyboard on the go. The style, while very clean, departs from the classic gray and orange look of Keychron in the past. I've got nostalgia at this point for the old look, which is why this is a potential deal breaker, but it very well could be a positive for you. Finally, the removal of QMK will definitely be missed by some people, though the battery life gains probably make up for it. So does this keyboard keep up with the competition? Well, I think it's close, but I also think that they might be falling behind just slightly. This is a solid mechanical keyboard. An earlier version of this was one of my first boards, and if you're looking for your first one, this is an awesome choice as it continues to get just a little bit better with each release. However, if your number one concern is your typing experience, check out some of those alternative options. On the other hand, if you just want something simple and these boards catch your eye, make sure you use one of the affiliate links in the video description before you make your purchase. Let me know what you guys think. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.